Hello and welcome. It's another Empire of the Cock podcast. And yes, it is the four amigos back again together. We have our very own Peter Kenny Jones, and we have Flashscore duo Steve Carson, the senior editor of Flashscore, I should add, and of course the very, very lovely Rick Elliott. How are we all doing, chaps? It's Bill. I believe Pete mentioned that the last time we all did a podcast all together, we were on course for a Champions League final in Paris and a potential Premier League title as part of a quadruple run. How did that go? I struggled to remember.
It's all just been a blur, and yeah, we might have won it. I don't know, but did we win it?
Did we do all four? I mean, by the time that City's, by the time City's financial charges come through, I imagine we'll have at least won the treble. So that's something at least.
No, anyway, my mind's on Dublin now. I'm looking forward.
Oh yes,
straight to Dublin.
Yes. The Red Wall. I mean, so this is our 101st Empire of the Cock podcast. Obviously, we had grand designs about getting the big 100. That honour, so to speak, went to Neil Jones instead. I mean, I believe we'd sort of planned to do a sort of transfery kind of focus pod, looking at all the deals Liverpool might have been well advised to do in January, could be looking to do in the summer. And then, of course, we all got the news. I say we all got the news. Rick, I believe, sent through the news on the little WhatsApp and broke all our hearts. So I'm not blaming Jurgen for this one. I'm blaming specifically Rick for breaking my heart.
I just kept my mouth shut. And
Yes, no. We could have lived in it. We could have lived in momentary bliss until one of us had hopped onto the BBC Sport page. But yes, that is it. We are here now on the 101st Empire of the Cock podcast. I hope now we've all had time to sort of shed tears and begin processing this sort of very difficult news that none of us really saw coming. I mean, Rick, as the bearer of bad news yourself, I'm going to come to you first with this. How are you feeling right now about it all? And well, do you reckon the timing of the announcement was right?
Ooh. So the timing question, so there's part of it that says yes. I mean, you look at those initial two games and the bounce that we had, and it was just like we came out swinging with the news, and Anfield was roaring. But then you sort of, I think we were overdue. If we're really being honest with ourselves, we were overdue some sort of bad results, and so that Arsenal game's come along, and we've just gone off. It's just completely taken the wind out of the sails. I mean, some of those were just sort of freak incidents, like Alisson and Van Dijk. They've been perfect record pretty much, and then they go off and do something that sort of clumsy. You just can't predict those kind of things. You can't sort of squash them out really in training unless you sort of just work a little bit more on communication. But these two are professionals, and the fact that it only happened once in how many years? Can we really say that there's been an absolute calamitous issue like that? It's just, yeah. So now, to go back to Klopp, I feel like we're still in this kind of period of mourning, and it'll just carry on until we get the new manager in, really. Even if we're sort of like wind back in the sails, we're all like, the balloon is inflated and we are like, puffed up, ready to go. There's just that all, like, when I first heard the news, it was just like, I'm a grown man, like, trying to hold back tears here about a guy who's just basically gone, you know what, I don't like this job anymore. So here's my notice. Like that's when you break it down to, like, the old Brexit, just kicking around a bag of wind, that whole philosophy. Then it's like, yeah, well, if you strip it down, then yeah, it is quite sad that we've taken. But that just tells you so much about who Jurgen is as a person and what he's brought to the club and what he's brought to the people, the fans, the city, everything. So yeah, that's kind of how I am a bit. I'm like, it's still a bit like, I've got myself earning a glass with Klopp on. I'm still like, I see, like, I've got Funko Pops and everything. I everywhere I look, I've got like traces of Jurgen.
You can't get away from him.
It's going to take a while. It's going to take a while.
I think you've summed it up quite well. And I think, I suppose when we look at the timing front, I mean, there's so many sort of arguments for and against, wait until the end of the season. Or I think certainly the initial reaction from anyone sort of outside of Liverpool was Liverpool up for a title here, Liverpool up for 4 competitions here. Why on earth would Jurgen sort of give up this news? But I think it's a different way of looking at it. If we're looking at it from the context of, as Liverpool fans, generally, well, at least half of us here sort of living in Merseyside, I think it's a different sort of story, Steve, because I think Jurgen, obviously the club knew about this since November. Jurgen's come out with the news sort of at the tail end of January, and we know that now that Liverpool have the time to begin the process of recruiting a sporting director, recruiting a new head coach and a body of coaches, of course, to replace the outgoing Pep Linders, Vita Matos and Pete Kravitz. We know Liverpool and FSG have their best men on the case. William Spearman, our lead data cruncher, Mike Gordon, president of FSG, and now a former ally turned confidant, and Theo Epstein, of course, who played a prominent role with the Boston Red Sox and the Chicago Cubs. It's going to be a very intricate process. It's going to be a very data-heavy process. Are you feeling optimistic about this entire sort of process of finding a new Liverpool manager?
Now that I've accepted that it's happening, I think you do start to look forward to what's next. When it first happened, obviously there is that, you go through the stages of grief where you sort of, it's not actually happening, and you just sort of get up into this like emotional ball, and then you begin to accept it. Like, okay, in terms of the timing, just to go back on that quickly, I think it might have been just a way of the club to control the story, because like you said, Farrell, the club has known since November. Obviously the season had begun, so it was a case of it's going to have to come out at some point, and for the the assistant managers and the coaches, it has been a case that they're going to be looking for other jobs. So the club has to get control of the story. Otherwise, we're going to hear it from Fabrizio Romano a week before we heard from Jurgen Klopp that he's leaving the club. And that's not the way the fans deserve to find out. I certainly think Jurgen and his right hand and left hand men would be feeling the same way as well. That it's best coming from the horse's mouth, so to speak. In terms of being optimistic looking forward, I think that's really the only way that we can go. You go back to one of the first things that Jurgen said when he came to the club, that you've got to go from being doubters to believers. And he took over a team that, was not very capable in terms of the way that we've performed in recent years, that level of capability. We'd sort of found ourselves in a position where, to be honest with you, we probably would have been a step away from where Chelsea are right now. Obviously through different circumstances, but at risk of becoming a mid-table club. And he's turned us into this, to quote Shankly, a bastion of invincibility. I say that having just lost to Arsenal, but you get what I'm at there. That obviously being such a significant result for them as well shows how far the club has come on the clock. And I think you have to be optimistic looking forward. I don't think there's any other way of being about it. I think that's one of the things that he's taught us over the last few years. You've always got to look on the bright side of these things. And, even in defeat, even in the bad times, Jurgen's always smiled. He's always, celebrated. Don't get me wrong. He's always also moaned as well about certain things. But that's what we all do. It's the way football is. It's a game, and we should get some joy out of it. It's a bit of a journey, who we see in the hot seat next. And I wouldn't go as far as to say I'm looking forward to it, because that implies I'm looking forward to Klopp leaving, which I'm not. That's going to be a horrendous sort of period. But, everything's got to come to an end. And he's been saying it for years that, he's always precursed this, if you like, that it was going to happen this way. And lo and behold, here he is, a bit sooner than we expected, but he's on his way out. And I think you've got to remain positive. The team that he's beginning to assemble, that Liverpool 2.0, that's been sort of bashed about in the media as like a name for this team. I think he's put together the pieces. The next manager's basically got to just come in and just not be a dickhead, and it'll be absolutely fine. But we'll wait and see, because there's loads out there. But I'm sure the club is, like you said, Farrell, really taking their time about finding the right character to replace Jurgen Klopp. And it probably is the character that is more important than managerial prowess or something, which I'm sure that kind of comment will lead us into chatting about the Xabi Alonso. But yeah, I'll put it back to you now, and we can delve further.
Yeah, can I just want to add something. So one thing that I thought a lot of people in sort of like, the Liverpool podcast circle, so to speak, have picked up on is around November. Because all last season, I mean, it wasn't exactly one of the better seasons, and Klopp's sort of like worn out and sort of looked and felt a bit sort of down in the dumps. And then November came around, and it was almost as if he had this whole burst of energy, and a lot of people were commenting on like, "Oh, he seems re-energized and he's ready to go, and here we go with his Liverpool 2.0." And then it's just sort of like, well, now in retrospect, it's like, well, that's when he told the club, that's when like he made his decision that, oh, this is the point when I'm like, that's it, end of the season. And so in retrospect, it's like, oh wow, like maybe it wasn't that sort of energy boost that we all thought it was. But it's one of those things that, like, now when you look back at the telltale signs were there all along. But yeah, it's just weird how these kind of things unfold.
You do have that sort of oh shit moment. It all makes sense. I think he even said that, he was in a meeting, I think was it a strategy meeting ahead of the season, and he sort of had that internal thought of, I'm not sure if I can do this again next year, and that he'd never had that sort of thought before, and that he felt the relief he felt in terms of saying, guys, I can't go on for another season. I've got to cut the contract short. And I think ultimately what we've seen is almost a Jurgen sort of unshackled, unleashed, and it's nice to know that he certainly feels that when he feels comfortable in his decision. He certainly earned the right to feel that way, given the time commitment, what he's brought to the club, the level of prestige. You talked about doubters to believers, changed everything from top to bottom. So if anyone certainly has the right to say, I'm not in a position to give 100% anymore going forward, I think it's certainly Jurgen. I mean, Pete, we'll talk about sort of Xabi Alonso, sort of Steve was sort of mentioning there, but sort of more generally, I think what was interesting is I was listening to an Anfield Rap episode the other day, and I think Neil Atkinson was sort of saying something like, in terms of his general reaction to the Klopp news, it's important that whoever follows in Jurgen Klopp's footsteps, that they're not a Jurgen Klopp 2.0, in the sense of they have to be their authentic selves. And I think that's absolutely true, but it also certainly relies on a bit more beyond that, because, this is a unique club, a unique fan base. You want an emotional connection to a head coach that comes in, not just some distant, moody kind of tactico. So I suppose that brings me to my question, which is, what is the checklist that the next Liverpool manager has to fulfill?
God, easy job, eh?
Easy, yeah. No,
well, I think you're saying you don't. Well, no, we don't. You can't get another Jurgen Klopp. Is the point I'm trying to say? Like, there's never going to be another person like him, is there? So, and as much as maybe you think we don't want a moody tactician on the sideline, we've seen the likes of Rafa. We've seen a lot of quieter managers be part of our club. And Jurgen Klopp is probably the most unique, and he's the most emotional on the sidelines. We'd see Kenny celebrate when he was definitely on his second stint, but he'd run about 5 yards with his hands in the air. He wouldn't be Klopp's fist pumps at the end, high-fiving fans, going mad with the bench. And obviously we love that, but everyone is different, everyone's unique, and there's no way you can say, let's go and get the next Jurgen Klopp, because they don't exist. And it's all about just getting the right person for the job. And if the right person sits there and doesn't get off the chair, we'll probably love that, because we all love the Rafa taking his glasses off, folding them up and putting them in his top pocket. You find other things to love. Obviously, when they come to at the end and Klopp's going like that and all the fans are going mad, that's obviously easy to get behind. And I know a lot of not very good managers start doing it now as well, and I think they can see how easy it is to win fans over doing it. But it's all just about the results, and I think we have got to play an attacking, attractive style of football. I don't think we would be too happy if it was long ball and get behind 5 men at the back and nick every game 1-0, but same again, if you win the league doing that, how upset will you be? It's all about getting results and hopefully entertaining the fans. And yeah, that's Jurgen Klopp's made this decision now, as you said, as Steve said, not so that we don't see Fabrizio Romano telling us it. It's so he can tell us, and also that the club can start looking for a proper option. You know, if we're trying to interview people, if we're touting out if they're interested, you know, it only takes one person to leak it, and then the story's everywhere. So, yeah, you just got to find someone who wants to be a Liverpool manager, which I think 99.9% of all managers would probably take the job. Maybe Pep Guardiola would be the hardest sell, but I think other than that, pretty much everyone would jump at the chance to be our manager. So we're in a very privileged position. And Jurgen Klopp, if he was ever going to leave the club, this is the best way to leave. And as much as I hated it, you know, he hasn't been sacked. He's not in ill health. He isn't sneaking off at the end of the season, and we're not getting to have time to properly replace him. You know, he's given us notice. We all know what's coming, and it's probably, hopefully, going to give us more energy as fans and as players to achieve what we want to achieve this season and then go on from there. So, yeah, the checklist is just, you want to be a Liverpool manager, you play half-decent football, and most importantly is that you win stuff. But I think we will give the next man time, which I think is something that is also got to be needed. But yeah, I think there aren't many better jobs that could ever become available than the one Jurgen Klopp's going to leave, and let's just hope we're holding a few trophies as forever the next man's coming in as well.
No, it's an interesting point you raise, Pete, because certainly, you know, you look at sort of some of the commentary has sort of been revolving around, you know, that's almost a poison chalice for whoever sort of next comes in, because you've got to live up to Jurgen Klopp, this sort of almost Shankly, Paisley-esque sort of figure. But you're right to point out, it's still a very, very attractive job. It's one of the best job, arguably one of the top 3 jobs, head coach positions in world football at the minute. We're number one, certainly in our eyes, but certainly more broadly, I suppose, you'd have to say at least top 3. Which brings me sort of to the next topic, which is, of course, potential Jurgen Klopp successors. It's not something we're particularly looking forward to, but, you know, Pete, we're going to have to give whoever comes in time. You're absolutely right to point that out. I just had a quick little game for all of us to play before we do go and do. Don't worry, it's not the Pete quiz. Don't worry, I wouldn't steal that from you. Yes, no, I'm curious to see whether you've been keeping up with this. Of course, Odds Checker have all the latest odds on potential Klopp successors. I'm sure you'll all be familiar roughly about who's in the top 10 list to replace Klopp at the end of the season. But I wonder if any of you can guess the top 10 least likely coaches to succeed Jurgen Klopp according to Odds Checker. And bear in mind, there are about 65 different names there, so you might want to think outside of the box. I wonder if anyone... I have the top 10 right here, and so we'll begin crossing them off. One at a time. Who wants to take a punt?
Frank Lampard.
Frank Lampard is correct. He is the 10th. Not the least likely. It's at the opposite end of the spectrum. Frank Lampard with a win percentage of 42.13% throughout his managerial career.
Troy Deeney.
Troy Deeney is he's not on the list. That would have been brilliant. No, sadly not. Well, sadly, or perhaps more happily not on the list.
Big Sam, is he on there?
Big Sam is not in the bottom 10 on Odds Checker.
So they're going to be like semi-likely, but not likely.
Yeah,
I'll give you a clue. A few of them are ex-Liverpool players.
Yeah.
Robbie Fowler.
Robbie Fowler is currently the least likeliest option to replace Jurgen Klopp as manager. Madly, Frank Lampard would have a better chance of replacing Jurgen Klopp than Robbie Fowler, according to Odds Checker. There we go. There's 2 names off the list.
I don't like being the other side of these.
The pressure's on.
So Roy Hodgson is he on that list?
Roy Hodgson is on the list. He is the 8th person, so the 8th likeliest person on that list, just behind. 2 behind Frank Lampard.
Is Rafa one? Rafa Benitez.
Rafa is not on. He's one of the candidates of the 65, but he's not in the bottom 10.
10. Okay.
Jose Mourinho.
Jose Mourinho is not considered a bottom 10 candidate.
Jose
Controversial,
Enrique.
but I would.
No, no.
Controversial, but I think
not
Mourinho would probably be in the top in that short list, to be honest, based on the fact that he's available right now.
Yeah.
I'm all right.
Mm-hmm.
Ex-Liverpool players.
I mean, there's one name.
Ex-Liverpool players.
Gerrard, but I don't think he'll be at the bottom.
He's up there, isn't he?
Yeah.
One of them is a former national manager, and one of them currently manages in League One.
Oh. I don't know who that could be.
Martin's not in there either.
I think former Liverpool player from the, I suppose mostly from the Benitez era onwards, but there's one name in there that's very, very pre-Benitez.
Albert Riera?
Not Albert Riera.
But he was. Benitez era. I hate this. Sami Hyypiä.
Not Sami Hyypiä.
Just trying to think who's gone on to become a manager. Martin Skrtel, I know he's like a player coach almost back home.
Not Martin Skrtel, but think centre-backs and midfielders.
Mascherano.
Not Mascherano.
Momo Sissoko.
Sadly,
Let's
not
go through
Momo
the song,
Sissoko.
shall we?
Yeah.
Danny Agger. Is he what?
Not Agger. Think I might have to think the Istanbul sort of. What?
Traore.
Not Traore. No.
Harry Kewell.
Who?
Harry Kewell.
Not Harry Kewell.
No.
Milan Baros. Vladimir Smicha.
Not Milan Baros. Good
Steve
shout
Finnan.
though, but not
Jesse
not
Dudek.
Steve Finnan.
No one knows who Steve Finnan is. Jibril Cisse?
No, sadly not.
He's a DJ, isn't he? Yeah.
I'm just letting you guys just go through the whole squad at this point.
This is a great memory exercise.
Fernando Risa. No.
No, not Risa.
That's the whole team. Isn't it?
You're missing a few.
Reyna's
Alonso.
still playing.
Yes,
Oh,
he's
that was
higher up.
fun.
It's Smicha.
Yeah, Alonso's a lot higher. Alonso's a lot higher up.
Have we said Smicha?
Antonio Nunes.
No, not
Hosami.
Smith, not Nunes, not Hosami.
Jimmy
This is so
Traore.
not Jimmy Traore. This is so obscure. It's brilliant.
Obscure.
Chris Kirkland. Scott
Not
Carson.
quick, I should say, sorry, not Scott Carson. These
Jack Whitbread.
two of these are quite prominent.
Oh, for God's sake.
Someone out there is screaming right now at us.
You will kick yourselves. You need to get two of these.
Carragher.
Carragher
I
is
said
on the
it.
list. Did you say him?
I said Carragher and Neville at the start.
Oh, it's not Neville, but Carragher. All right, we'll give that to the pair of you. Apologies, Pete. I didn't hear you. Carragher is fourth bottom.
Rightly so. Yeah.
I don't even think he has coaching badges, does he?
Oh, I don't know.
I actually don't know, you know.
I feel like he
Carragher.
might do, but I think that's behind him now, isn't it? Pundit.
Should bring his Monday Night Football analysis to the to the AXA
I
training.
don't think he dared touch managerial jobs because you just know that Valencia is just going to be like the comparison.
Maybe he
The
goes
stick he's
man
given
down.
Neville for this, yeah.
Yeah, I think Van Dijk would definitely leave as well if we got Carragher.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of which,
Right, come on.
coincidentally, last Saturday I think it was the anniversary of Valencia getting beat 6-1. I think it was in the Copa del Rey.
No, to Barca.
Nice. Yeah, to Barca.
What are we looking for here, Farrell?
Yeah, is this after Istanbul now?
Two midfielders from the Benitez era.
Lucas Leiva.
Not Leiva.
Jay Spearing.
Not Jay Spearing. More prominent.
Right.
Alberto Aquilani.
Not Aquilani. More prominent.
Gerrard.
Not Gerrard. Gerrard's a little bit higher up, strangely, but
Gerrard. Alonso. Mascherano. Momo Sissoko. Who else in the midfield in this era? Is it after Benitez or in the Benitez era?
In the Benitez, in the
Is he a man?
Benitez. Is he a what?
Didi
Didi a man?
Didi Hamann, yeah.
Oh, man.
Didi Hamann.
Didi Hamann is
Don't get
there.
cancelled.
He is. There he is. He's in 6th place.
Sure, I
Didi
said
Hamann. There we go. There we go.
We were very close to getting cancelled there. Let's pat on the back.
Watch the tape back. I said Hamann and Carragher about an hour ago, by the way.
He did.
All right, okay. So you're missing one. You're missing a Liverpool midfielder. You're missing another former Liverpool player, but well before a prominent Liverpool player well before the Benitez era.
Kenny Dalglish.
Not Kenny Dalglish.
Stan Collymore.
Soonish.
And you're missing not Stan Collymore.
Damn it.
And you're also missing a Liverpool midfielder from the Klopp era. So you've got Benitez era, Klopp era, and a prominent Liverpool midfielder pre-Benitez.
Graham Souness.
Not Graham Souness, but you're thinking along the right lines.
For the Klopp
Steve
era
Clark.
one, James Milner.
Ooh.
Not James Milner. That was an interesting shout. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. I meant defender from the pre-Benitez era. Prominent defender from the pre-Benitez era. Apologies.
Sammy up here. Stefan Huncho.
Oh, no, sadly not.
Mark Lawrenson.
Not Mark Lawrenson.
Ooh.
Steve Nicol.
Not Steve Nicol.
Great opinions these days. Alan Kennedy.
No, sadly not.
How far back are we going?
Yeah.
We're thinking 70s and 80s.
Okay. And centre back or full back?
It'd be a centre-back.
Star. Oh my God.
Is he actually a manager?
Is he actually a manager? No, he's not currently a manager.
Oh, right.
But he was a
okay.
caretaker manager.
Oh, dear.
Oh, Phil Thompson.
Here's Phil Thompson.
Hey.
There we go. So that is
Like
6 names from the list. So you have a prominent midfielder from the Jurgen Klopp era, a midfielder from the Benitez era, a former international manager who was recently sacked, and a current manager of a League One club in England.
Hansi Flick.
Not Hansi Flick.
And
So this one's actually quite. So
whatever it is.
No. He sacked, I think, last year. I'd be actually surprised if you got this. It's quite maybe not obscure, but verging.
This is a killer. Midfielder in the Klopp era. We should be able to get that surely.
Do you want to try and get the midfielder in the Klopp era and the midfielder in the Benitez era?
Ginny Wijnaldum, Milner, Henderson.
Jordan Henderson is the second least likely to take up the Liverpool job. Jordan Brian Henderson.
Yeah, I actually
Very strange.
Who would have seen that come? I was looking at this list and thinking, this is insane. I think you must be making it up as you go along, even with 65 candidates.
Blew past us. We said Henderson then as well, so I think that says how likely it is he's going to be manager.
Exactly. Well, there you go. So you've got one former Liverpool midfielder from the Benitez era, a former international manager sacked last year, and one League One current club manager.
Damien Plessis.
Sadly not.
Who's managing the League One? That's relevant to us.
Be someone Scouser like that, Carl Robinson or something like that. Or that Coleman. Not Ryan Lowe. Not the Schumacher. Little Scouts.
Ricky Lambert on there.
Oh. He's not. That would have been an interesting one, though.
Yeah,
the former Benitez midfielder. Let's see. So, what clues can I give? What clues can I give you?
Christian Paulson, was he there during that era?
Oh,
Christian
God,
Paulson was post Benitez, isn't it?
It's all a blur.
He's Croatian, if that helps. He's currently managing Al Shabab.
Igor Biscan.
It is Igor Biscan.
Hey,
He is 7th on the list, just ahead of Roy Hodgson, as he should be.
Yeah, nice.
Well, I have a feeling does anyone want to take a final punt on the last two names before I reveal them?
we've got 5 last year as an international coach.
I feel the international coach is going to get us. It's going to be something that we've just kind of put to the back of our mind because it was a year ago.
It is. I should say it is a hard one. It's not quite obscure, but it is
Mancini?
surging on it. Not Mancini.
No, I can't remember when that was actually. No.
All right then. Okay. So
Go on.
number 5 in the list of the least likely candidates to replace Jurgen Klopp as manager of Liverpool Football Club is Jan Andersson, former Sweden manager, sacked last year.
Yeah, I wouldn't have got that.
Yeah, that was never on my.
It's a bit of an evil one. And in third place, in between Phil Thompson and Jamie Carragher, is manager of Charlton Athletic, Nathan Jones.
Oh, right.
Why him?
I
He
have
does.
absolutely no idea, Pete. Apparently, Phil Thompson would be a better choice. Phil Thompson and Robbie Fowler beg your pardon. Jamie Carragher would be a better choice than Nathan Jones. I'm reading this list wrong. So in order of least likely to most likely of the bottom 10 candidates to replace Jurgen Klopp, Robbie Fowler right at the bottom, followed by Phil Thompson, Nathan Jones, Jamie Carragher, Jan Anderson, Didi Hamann, Igor Biscan, Roy Hodgson, Jordan Henderson, and Frank Lampard.
Robbie
Everyone must
Fowler
make an
is
argument
more.
to turn that list over, wouldn't you?
Robbie Fowler is more successful at getting other managers' jobs at Liverpool than he is getting his own job at Liverpool. With the whole Sven situation, he's actually done better as a recruitment specialist.
Well, maybe he's made his case then to sort of come in. But, you know, we'll we've discussed those candidates. Rick, out of curiosity, which of those would make your stomach squirm the least to see them in the Liverpool technical area next season?
Probably. I mean, Hodgson's always a good one. I mean, especially now you see like how things are going with Elise. It seems like a carbon copy of how Daniel Sturridge was treated when Hodgson was as an England manager. It just seems like it. I mean, this is just me speculating here, but it seems like his resolve is being tested.
Interesting player, Elise, as well. Been heavily linked with both Liverpool and Manchester City. But that's a topic for another podcast, another time. So we've looked at sort of the least likely candidates who I think it's fair to say, God willing, will go absolutely nowhere near the Liverpool technical area anytime soon. So I think it's time to talk about a bit more of a positive subject, which is the top 10 most likely candidates, according to Odds Checker, to take over the Liverpool job. And of course, as it currently stands from top to bottom, we have Xabi Alonso, Roberto De Zerbi, Pep Linders, Julian Nagelsmann, Ruben Amorim, Michel Sanchez of Girona, Zinedine Zidane, Roger Schmidt, Unai Emery, and Ange Postecoglou. Quite a list of coaches, of course. But I think, we discussed this early on. Absolutely anyone we bring in to replace Jurgen Klopp will be a downgrade of some form, at least initially. But not forever, we would hope. So obviously the bookie's favourite at the minute, Rick, is former beloved Red, Xabi Alonso. And Liverpool are, according to Foot Mercato, understood to have already made contact with Alonso to work out if he fancies the job or not. The report does go on to state that he's happy at Leverkusen. His actual comments on the matter, of course, in a recent press conference do reflect as much. But, I mean, that's not necessarily a cause for concern, isn't it? Because you look at, his side are gunning for their first ever Bundesliga title, the first trophy since 1993, which was the German Cup for Leverkusen. He's not going to want to destabilise his team's efforts whilst they're top of the table by saying, I want that job, get me to that job, gimme, Jurgen, gimme. He's going to want to perpetuate his team's success at this time and then presumably form a decision in the summer.
Yeah.
That is your cue.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mean, like, I think the thing is, like, he's on, what is it, 30 game streak that they're on now. It's a phenomenal achievement. You can't deny that. That being said, aside from this incredible streak that they're on, he doesn't really have. I mean, he's obviously working within a certain cap of, like, working within his means, which is, when we've seen countless times how many times Jurgen has had to do that with so and so is right there, and then all of a sudden we can't get him because we haven't got the funds, and that's a tale as old as time. So seeing that come into play against the might of Bayern Munich, it's great to see. But that being said, and this is the case for a lot of the people on that list, when you look back at, like, what they actually achieved over a sustained period of time, it's a bit lacking. You could have said that about Jurgen, but he had a Champions League final to his name. There's a lot of stuff that I'm just sort of going through all the names. It's like, it feels as though there's certain brackets of managers. You've got your sort of elite level, of which there are only a few, and I would say, like, the likes of Ancelotti are in there, Klopp is in there, Guardiola's in there, and then you've got, like, your sort of second basket, where you've got the likes of maybe like a Pochettino, maybe Ten Hag, but at the bottom end of that scale.
Mourinho.
And it seems like, sorry,
maybe Mourinho.
Yeah, Mourinho. I'd say he's more in the middle of that scale, but he's still in that basket. And it feels as though it's we're going to have to pick from that basket rather than the top end. And it also feels as though this feels very much like it's a Brendan Rodgers style signing rather than a Klopp or a Benitez. It feels as though it's like we're going to have to take a punt on someone, and what the club are doing right now, from what we can see on outsiders' perspective, of like we're handing it to data analysts and stuff like that. So it's like we're going to make an educated guess, but it's going to be a punt. But it's the most calculated of punts that we could possibly take, because, like we've said before, there is no replacing Jurgen Klopp, and unless you're willing to spend silly money bringing in a manager from a rival club, like Real Madrid, it's never going to happen, but like Man City, you're not going to get another manager that's going to be like that safety net straight away from the even Alonso, if he comes in, there's still going to be a bit of uncertainty. There's still going to be a bit of adapting the players to his style of play, getting in other players to help get it all in line. It feels like there's going to be some molding that's going to need to take place. And that's why the likes of Ancelotti, he can just sort of work with anyone he's given and sort of find a tactic that will work with what he's got, and then slowly over time adapt and build into that. So yeah, that's, like I said, it's just finding the right kind of manager within the bracket that we can, even though we could go for pretty much everyone that we can think of, it's going to be from that middle bracket.
Oh, it's an interesting point you certainly make about sort of the time spent in coaching. Obviously, he's only got sort of 67 games as the Bayer Leverkusen boss, so 67 games in senior management. And of course, I mean, Steve, we look at sort of the bracket of managers available, but I think almost if you're in Liverpool's position, you want a sense of continuity in the sense of whilst perhaps and Ancelotti, I mean, certainly you're not going to get Guardiola. Ancelotti's extended to 2026 with Madrid, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. So you're almost forced into that sort of middle bracket, as Rick was saying, anyway. And I think we almost have to respect that there is going to be, on the spectrum, some degree of stark change at Liverpool. whether that's due to personality, tactics, and style. We are going to expect something quite considerably different. I don't know if you've sort of been keeping sort of track generally of sort of Alonso's sort of tactics and system with Leverkusen. But the Athletic's John Muller did quite an interesting sort of piece on this, noting that obviously his side plays a considerably higher degree of shorter passes. He's less wedded to the long passes, say Jurgen is at Liverpool. A back three, of course, that would be one of the most initial sort of stark systematic sort of changes you would see with often the right centre back pushing out wide, plenty of bodies in midfield. It's a lot of sort of short combinations to get from A to B, emphasis on midfielders pushing the ball through the pitch rather than sort of possession building with defenders as the case at Liverpool. I mean, do you think this? I mean, ultimately, we've got to accept there's going to be change. Do you think this could work at Liverpool? Or is it almost pointless talking about change? Because even you look at sort of Jurgen's time at Liverpool, he's not stayed completely wedded to certain practices from 2015 onwards. He's adapted, he's evolved. So some amount of change is surely acceptable.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Leverkusen, they're playing with three centre halves, and that is actually a formation we have seen at Liverpool in one form or another. We've had the two flying fullbacks basically operating as wingers at that point. So a new manager brings in a new style. I think we know that. Jurgen came in and brought in the heavy metal football, as he called it, and over the course of the years, it has changed from heavy metal. We had a bit more of a, maybe elegant team now than we were when we were doing the full heavy metal smash, run up the pitch, gegenpressing, that kind of beast. But yeah, there's always going to be some changes. I think Rick there talking about the sort of inexperience of Xabi Alonso, which is, absolutely, it's a fair concern. And I do wonder whether, and it's a little bit of an out there suggestion, but I do wonder whether the club might consider something like that, as Xabi is the correct successor, and then maybe taking cues from Klopp over the last few years. When you can't get the right man at the right time, do you maybe go for like a buffer manager? For us, ideally, I mean, that probably would have been Linda's, for a couple of years. But I do wonder, as I say, I don't believe this will happen, but I wonder an idea that you could bring in someone like Zidane for a couple of years, someone who's a proven winner, and just basically he comes in and implements his kind of style mixed with how the Liverpool players currently play. You bring in a manager who already will command that respect. I don't think there's any discipline issues with the Liverpool squad, but obviously Zinedine Zidane or somebody of his ilk would command respect, as opposed to somebody like, he's not been talked about too much, but I've seen a few people talk about the idea of Thomas Frank. I don't know whether he would command the same sort of, that kind of feeling from the players. I'm not too sure on that side of things, to be honest, but I do wonder whether there could be that period of, okay, we'll bring in a short-term manager as like a stopgap, because we've done that with players in the past where we can't get the perfect player, so we'll get someone who'll do the job. The current example is Wataru Endo. Obviously, Endo was doing a great job at the club, but he wasn't the first choice, but he's a good choice for a couple of years, and then we'll get the person we want to take over the position for the next 5 to 10 years in the next couple of windows. So I do wonder whether maybe the club will have some kind of gentleman's agreement in place with someone like Alonso, and they'll give him a little bit longer to see how he performs. Maybe even like De Zerbi might even give him a little bit longer. I don't know, how the sort of puppeteering behind the scenes works, but that idea that there could be like a buffer manager for a couple of years, someone like Zidane, because he's always taking on short-term projects. So I do wonder that. I don't think that'll happen myself, but I think it's maybe an interesting idea to sort of rabbit hole to go down, if you like. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be change no matter who comes in. Like Pete said before as well, you don't want Jurgen Klopp 2.0. You do need change. As long as they come in and be genuinely who they are, which is, again, what Pete said, come in and just be yourself, be genuine. If you look back at Brendan Rodgers' time at Liverpool, I think he was trying to be something that he wasn't. He turned out to be a very good manager away from the club. He was close to being great at Liverpool, but maybe come a little bit too soon. So maybe there's something we can learn there as well. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be wholesale changes in one way or another when Klopp sort of bids us adieu in the summer.
There's certainly a logic there to sort of think about, and as you and sort of Rick have sort of pointed out, we are almost in that sort of Brendan Rodgers territory of we are going to have to hire someone at least relatively inexperienced. We're not in a similar situation to where Jurgen Klopp was coming off the back of a sabbatical at Borussia Dortmund, having won the title twice and been in the Champions League final. It's a very different sort of category of manager. Similarly, a very similar position City will be in, presumably, when Guardiola does eventually hang up his sweatshirts and all that. I suppose the question is really, Pete, is my main concern, of course, and it is perhaps maybe more an argument led by emotion than facts, perhaps, is we know Alonso has this sort of gentleman's agreement with Leverkusen that realistically, if one of his three prior clubs, Bayern Munich, Liverpool, Real Madrid, come in for him at any point, the likelihood is if Alonso wants to go, he'll go. Do Liverpool want to be in a position where perhaps we take this approach of going, let's just see this out for 2 years until a more obvious option appears on the market? And hypothetically, and again, this is very, very hypothetical, we see Alonso go to Madrid and winning titles and Champions Leagues. And it could go the other way, of course. Liverpool could steer clear of Alonso. He takes the bigger job. We go, thank God we didn't go for Alonso. Thank God we didn't tarnish that sort of love and sort of reputation that he's built up as a player at Liverpool. But it could very well go the other way. And, do we want to take that risk of missing out on what appears to be, albeit a very inexperienced coach, but one of the most promising upcoming coaches in European football?
Well, you have to see how the season ends, I think, though. Yeah, if we go back on what we've done in our lifetimes of getting new managers, I think, in Rafa and Klopp, they've gone for people who have won major trophies. And obviously, Rafa broke up the Real Madrid, Barcelona run of winning La Liga. And obviously, Jurgen Klopp's still the last person in Germany to stop Bayern Munich winning it. But then obviously we look at Roy Hodgson, who was probably, as maybe you were inferring before, stay about like a stopgap signing. And then obviously we had Kenny, who came and saved us later on while the club was in disarray. And then we also had Brendan Rodgers, who was probably, he's a lot better than, Xabi Alonso's CV already looks a bit better than what Brendan Rodgers has did. But obviously managers on the rise, and either you take the chance and you go on the ride with them and hope that it keeps going up and up, or sometimes it can plateau, or sometimes it can go quite wrong. And as I said before, you've got to give the next person time. And I think just because of the way that this team at the moment, from the start of next season, it's going to be a young team. I think it's not a bad thing to have a young, exciting manager in there. It's not, although obviously we all want to win a lot of stuff now. I think Van Dijk, Alisson and Salah are probably the only people who will start thinking the next year or two that this is the last couple of years at the very, very top, and everyone else is on their way up to trying to reach the top of their game. So there's no harm if he's the right person in getting a young manager. And I think what they said in the press conference when Klopp was going was that they're going to look at all the analysis. And, we've all seen Moneyball, and we've all seen how we get our players, and this is a fair model. And it frustrates a lot of people, but, we're nowhere near any financial difficulties. We're nowhere near cheating with our finances either. So they're going to be looking at the numbers, and they're going to be looking at what makes any manager tick and what makes them the right candidate for the job. And I think if you look at Alonso, it's just, maybe it's good that we have got the chance now to put the feelers out, and then it could all go wrong, the wheels could fall off, and maybe we can back away then. But if we put the feelers in a hilly and he goes on, he can possibly win a treble, can't he, at Bayer Leverkusen? And they're probably thinking like we are, just enjoy the ride while you can this season, see what happens next year. Because I think they're 4 games off the longest ever unbeaten run, which is set by Bayern Munich. I think obviously all the bigger, so-called bigger teams are out of their cup as well. And it's only Klopp who can really stop Alonso in the Europa League and vice versa. So it's going to be an interesting end for the season for them. But I think if you look at who's on the market, as you say, it's Ancelotti, probably the most proven winner that we might be able to get, but I think his age would work against him, and that we don't want to be doing this again in a few years. I think FSG like the fact that we've had a manager that's been there for so long. I think Liverpool fans, Liverpool the club, we like having a manager who's a stable part of our club. And the only manager you could say it's perfect, go and get him, is Guardiola, but that seems incredibly unlikely. So you then have to look, as Rick said, to the next tier. And I think of who's out there, it's not hard to see that Xabi Alonso should at the very least be considered. And again, as Steve said before, you need someone who the players are listening to. Van Dijk, Salah will respect Xabi Alonso because the stuff he's won, the clubs he's played for. It's easier for the younger players to just be overawed by the club, but the senior players need someone who they will listen to. And obviously, it depends how Alonso finishes the season. But if he wins the league, he becomes the first manager since Klopp to stop Bayern Munich winning the league. Then it almost seems written that we should go and get the Bayern Munich stoppers are the ones who then go and become our managers. And as you say there, we saw with Bellingham, we watched him pass away and then go to Real Madrid. And it's the only worry is if he does go to Real Madrid or Bayern Munich, as you said, Farrell, and he starts winning, we've got no chance then. So maybe this could all work in our favour and we get an exciting young manager who understands the club and is willing to stay here for the next 10 years, and we get that stability and we go on a winning streak. But yeah, it's a lot of wishful thinking. But of the candidates, I think you can't really say that Xabi Alonso shouldn't at the very least be in a final shortlist.
We know it's going to be someone relatively young, and you've alluded to the demands of the Liverpool job. Jurgen Klopp has sort of talked about it in detail himself. It's a very demanding job, physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. It will take a lot out of you. So we have to imagine it will be someone who can handle those pressures for potentially a similar period of time, 8, 9, a decade. We'd hope if they're successful. Alonso would then fit that bill. Now, you'd have to imagine, of course, that expectations, perceptions really would change if he does go, end of the season, it's Leverkusen lifting their first ever Bundesliga title. He's broken a record there. You could potentially see, hopefully, Liverpool certainly in the final, but Leverkusen you look at as being the other team most likely to reach the final in Dublin. And obviously we want Liverpool to win that. But, my goodness, what that would do for Alonso's reputation if he lifted both the Europa League and the Bundesliga title by the end of the season. My goodness, how that would, I suppose, affect the doubters in the equation when it comes to his credentials for the Liverpool job. Obviously, now there are other candidates. This has been primarily a Xabi Alonso podcast, and I have absolutely no problems with that personally, but we do have to sort of touch on them on the list. Of course, Oddchecker's top 10 list also includes Brighton's Roberto De Zerbi, Pep Linders, Julian Nagelsmann, Ruben Amorim, Michel Sanchez, Zinedine Zidane, Robert Schmidt, Unai Emery, and Ange Postecoglou. I'll open this mainly to the group as if we can't get Alonso, what sort of alternatives do we really want to be looking at pursuing? I mean, the two names that pop out for me personally would be De Zerbi and perhaps Amorim of Sporting. De Zerbi, I almost feel a bit sorry in a sense that consensus on him appears to have shifted with Brighton's recent form, but some seem to kind of forget that his midfield has been gutted in the summer. You've lost Moises Caicedo, you've lost Alexis McAllister, and that effectively guts the Brighton midfield. I mean, their midfield against Palace in the 4-1 win consisted of Pascal Gross, an 18-year-old, and Jack Hinshelwood, Billy Gilmore, and Tariq Lamptey, who was effectively a right wing-back. Ruben Amorim won the title in his first season with Sporting and the League Cup, and on course again to potentially win it this term. Favours a back three like Alonso. Both play a sort of attractive brand of football, and young coaches as well. Plenty of promise. I mean, I'll put this to the group. What direction, hypothetically, should we go in if Alonso is just off the table?
De Zerbi. I think it's De Zerbi. I just think, I mean, obviously it comes down to the recruitment staff at Brighton as well, but what he's done over the last few years at that club, he's worked miracles out of very little, and you wonder, Liverpool is not a unlimited resource club, but we have been quite shrewd over the years. Sell to buy has been like a big thing under FSG, and that's worked really well for us. And you wonder, with a bit more backing, because obviously Brighton, they have limitations like other clubs do. You wonder maybe what could be if you gave him a bit more, but there's going to be question marks over every manager. Ange Postecoglou naturally comes up as well because he's a similar character to Jurgen Klopp. I think certainly his time at Celtic and Spurs has sort of showed that he is quite down to earth to a degree. I think character-wise, he could be sort of along those lines. I'm not 100% sold on that idea though, and trying to take him from Spurs would be a nightmare. Would he even do it? Because at that point you'd be questioning sort of, I suppose, from an outside perspective, outside of Liverpool, his integrity. He hasn't really give Spurs a proper crack, and then he leaves and joins us. So I'm not too sure about that. And yeah, based on just pure vibes, I don't know why. Frank seems to be somebody who I would maybe consider. I don't know. Know.
Yeah, Thomas Frank.
Yeah, no, definitely Thomas. Not Frank Lampard. But if it's not Xabi, it's De Zerbi. And to be honest, De Zerbi at this point might have already done more than Xabi to warrant being on the shortlist. Obviously, like you have all said, come the end of the season, that could be different. Xabi could have worked miracles in Germany, and like Pete said, it sets him up nicely to, whoever stops Bayern becomes Liverpool manager. That seems to be a good sort of threshold to pass. So yeah, that's sort of my 2 cents on it. Anyway, they're sort of the names that buzz around my head, but I haven't got a clue. When Klopp came in, he was not even. I didn't think we could get him. So you never know. You never know with these things.
I mean, I wouldn't mind picking up on that Zidane thread, even just as a short-term solution, just to give everyone a little bit more time to see how things fall into place. Yeah, so it would give Xabi a little bit more time to sort of find out if he can do it on multiple fronts, or keep doing it on multiple fronts, should I say. It's maybe allows Postecoglou to establish himself at Spurs, De Zerbi, see what happens after a summer of being able to refresh that midfield a little bit more. Those kind of options, having someone who would be a short-term solution, but actually knows their value, their worth, can actually, instill a little bit of because basically you don't want to end up in a situation where you've got lads who are barely that much younger than the lad who's in charge, and kind of going, all right, well, what have you actually done? Now, as we've all said, most of these people who are lined up are there for a reason. They've got the credentials. But even then, it's like as I say, you just want another season just to see how some of it shakes up. So maybe, like I say, someone like a Zidane, just a short term, year, 2 year, 3 year, whatever it may be, but it is a short term, and everyone is in agreement that it starts on this date, it ends on this date, and then we'll see. Maybe halfway through we go, right, okay, we actually like the look of Thomas Frank. We're going to go all in on him before he gets sniped by, Real Madrid or someone like that for their next managerial position. That's the thing. Like you were saying about Alonso, is you don't want to sit on it for too long, and then next thing you know, you've got Bayern sniffing around, or you've got Real Madrid sniffing around for him. So if you need to give these people a little bit more breathing space. But yeah.
Where do you stand, Pete?
Yeah, I don't know. No offense to you both. I don't see the point of getting a shortish term manager, because I feel like the whole reason Klopp said this early is we've got enough time to go and get the right manager. And how long do you wait? You can't, we've already got a fair. Well, what was it? January to when we start the season, August, and it's 8 months we've basically got. Obviously, we're got to get him in June, July, but we've got 8 months till the end of pre-season. So we're saying that I think that's more than enough time for the right candidate to be found, because you can wait around for years and what then if Thomas Frank gets relegated, but then he has a great season coming back, and then Zidane gets somewhere, it doesn't, it feels like too much. I feel like you're going to have to start the next project now, and whoever it is, we get behind for the long term. Of those people that you've said, other than Alonso, I'd be probably most inclined to give Pep Linders a go and just try and keep what we've got and keep it going, especially the history of this club and how that's always been a successful plan for us, really. And, if we're all comparing, it's going to sound bad, if we're all comparing Klopp to Shankly, then who's to say Linders couldn't be the next Paisley, which is a very incredibly large shout. But all I mean is who's to say that by sticking with what we already got, it couldn't get better, because then you can continue to promote from within. But we all know the story at the boot room and what happened. So I think that's the only other attractive option I'd see in that, just that we could just continue to go, as I say. But I wouldn't go for the short-term option. And if we did very much, even with Pep Linders, it's just that short-term and you give them a go. But yeah, I think it's got to be a long-term prospect. And of those others, maybe like an Unai Emery has proven himself, but I just don't think he plays the right football. That's the only thing that will go against him, because he's shown everywhere he's a very good manager, and we saw that in Basel against Seville, and Villa are very good at the moment as well. But I just think, and then you say about Postecoglou as well, I just think whether we'd be able to, I think we would be able to get him, to be fair, and he probably would also be an exciting one, but he's again and maybe another risk. But yeah, there's a lot of candidates in somebody.
So just to sum up, the boot room is Zinedine Zidane, or the sexiest man in football in Xabi Alonso. It's quite the shortlist to go through, and it's been a pleasure to go through them with my fellow three amigos. We've had Flashscores, Steve Carson, Rick Elliott, and our very own Peter Kenny-Jones, and I've been your host, Farrell Keeling, here on the Empire of the Cop podcast. Tune in for more next week. Take care. Bye.